Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. And it's just Marco here once again. I thought that I should make a part two to my review because there's just so much stuff that would be great to talk about. And I went through all of my screenshots from YouTube comments that I acquired over the past all the way since 2018, and unfortunately, I was not able to find the comment that talked about the birthday party with the bloody mattress, which I think is a shame because that was really interesting. See, what happened was my old main YouTube channel, which is like my personal channel that I use to watch like videos and stuff, it randomly got deleted in 2022 in April, actually, which is funny because April's tomorrow. It randomly got deleted out of nowhere, and they still have not let that account be restored for no reason at all. I mean, it's just so bizarre, and it didn't have anything to do with this or anything, but it was like a big like WTF. It was kind of like they just went in and were like, okay, we're going to delete all these random accounts for no reason at all. And I still haven't been given a valid reason for why it's still not up. But like, I was not able to find that comment, which is upsetting because I think that would have been valuable to show and not just tell. And I also wanted to make a few clarifications and comments based off the last video because I wanted to talk a little bit more about the documentary itself and how it handled all of Herb's victim stories and the family and everything. Something that I didn't touch on was I thought that they did a really good job with that aspect. Like, I was really able to see these people as people and to see them as like real people that were actually around rather than just kind of like these sleazy characters that like it seems like other documentaries made them look like other ones, like it's like, oh, these are these troubled individuals and like they were these seedy people in the seedy gay scene in the 90s in Indiana. And it's like, ooh, Indiana, just saying Indiana, you get a bad feeling, because Indiana is a strange place with strange people. I had an actress come here from Indiana, and she was the worst actor I've ever worked with. And what happened with her was like very much like what I should have expected from Indiana. And ironically, though, the last girl who came here, even though she lives in Florida, she was originally born in Indiana. So I guess as long as you get out of Indiana, you can be okay. Because if you stay there, it's like something's in the water, and that just something bad happens. But I really appreciated how we were able to see these and hear about these victim stories. One that I really enjoyed listening to was there was this guy, and his dad has only been rumored to have been a victim of Herb's. They haven't officially confirmed it yet. And it was a really, really, like, just... It just really put things into perspective. And it was really, really good to add, like, this bigger layer to the story of, like, not just focusing on, like, the bad guys and all of the bad stuff that happened, because... with any true crime case, that's what can happen, and I think that's a mistake, because I think when you're looking at it like that, you're looking at it from a perspective of like not really seeing the big picture. And what is the big picture? The big picture is that in that time period, these people were treated terribly, and they were sort of like, I don't know. It's almost like they lived in this alternate timeline with this alternate, like, because the police didn't care, nobody else really cared, and they were left to fend themselves. And so it's like they just got picked off, like they showed on that American Horror Story. And so that story about how the last time he saw his dad was his birthday, and the dad wasn't able to really spend very much time with him, and he said, "I'll see you next week." And like that was really, really heartbreaking. And I also really loved the last part of the documentary where the coroner was talking about, like he couldn't believe how badly gay people were treated back then and how different it was, and he started crying, and I thought that was great. I thought that was almost like even more satisfying than all of the Mark Goodyear stuff, because it showed that at least a little tiny bit of society has kind of changed and kind of evolved and kind of gotten to the point of where it's like gay people, lesbians, all these people are seen as people, rather than in the 90s where it almost seems like, I don't know, like they weren't even citizens. Because just thinking even about the poor investigation or the lack of investigation, it seems like there was no investigation. It's like they purposefully shoved all this under the rug. And they purposefully, and I think it has to do with all these other accomplices. And so I also wanted to talk about these screenshots. First off, this is the original story about the supposed Professor Robert Little sighting. And I really hope that the people who make the documentary learn about this, because I think that it would be pretty mind-blowing if there was a connection between Robert Little and Herb and Larry and everything, because you already have the lawyer. The lawyer connection is damning enough. And that's what I was saying yesterday. I don't think that point came across. The whole thing where I was saying that Mark being the one accomplice and all that, and the scapegoat, it feels that way because Herb had told his wife that Mark was a bad guy and he was a threat to the family. And to me, it was because he was trying to silence him and he didn't want anyone to learn about, what was really going on. And so when he called his lawyer and told him that Mark was a threat to his family, I didn't take that as Herb genuinely being scared of Mark and saying that Mark is a really bad guy. I took that as Herb throwing Mark under the bus. And they're both bad. They're both evil. They're both guilty in my books. But I think that, them trying to use that story with the lawyer, the phone call to the lawyer, was kind of phony baloney. Because it kind of just felt like they were validating this serial killer who, he was definitely trying to maintain control by saying that that this guy is a quote-unquote really bad guy and he's a threat to the family. So here is the first screenshot. This guy, I can't remember. I wish that I knew which video this was from as well. I wish that I had taken screenshots of that too, because it would have really helped, wouldn't it? I haven't been able to find this YouTube channel yet either. I think that this is okay to show because this was a public comment. This is a public YouTube channel. This was not some private message or anything. So he says, and honestly, this story is actually worse than what I described. What I described sounded kind of suspicious, but this sounds very suspicious. And I don't know if it's true. I'll say that. I said that last video, but it is very strange, especially because this is someone who supposedly, he doesn't really know anything about any of this stuff. And so the fact that he was able to describe this guy who looks exactly like Robert Little But anyways, let's get started. I lived in Westfield last year. I was working at Starbucks, and a man with large lensed glasses would always come to the shop when I was around, and he'd order the strangest drink, 10 scoops of matcha powder in a large cup with hot water. The first time I met him, the first thing he said to me was, after ordering, was, "You ever heard of Fox Hollow Farms?" I said that I hadn't. He told me it was just down the street. Immediately, one of my coworkers, who is considerably older than me, got in front of me on the register and handed the man his drink. Very abruptly. After the man left, he told me that he had interrupted because the man creeped him out. He knew the story of Herb Baumeister, and at the time, I was about the age of his victims at their deaths. I've seen that man multiple times at various Starbucks locations since. I saw him last week, actually. I don't know what he wanted to talk to me about, but something tells me he didn't want anything good. I know that obviously people make up stories. Like, there's a lot of these videos where it's like 10 disturbing stories about school, or I've seen disturbing stories about working at the movie theater. But this sounds very intriguing, and it sounds like something that might have really happened, and especially given the fact that what I thought was surprising looking back is that this feels like something that Mark would have done. Although Mark does not fit the description, as you can see. The next comment is, he was old, 1970s style, large plastic glasses, sort of short, balding with whitish gray hair, white. So then I showed him pictures and footage of Professor Little, and he says, of the few pictures of him that are on a quick Google search, I think you're probably right. So right there, what I find just very odd and interesting is the fact that he didn't know anything about Professor Little, supposedly, but he gave an extremely accurate description, which is what the cold case investigator says in the show about Mark on a lot of case files, is that like these people are describing him to a T, and it doesn't really seem like they have any ill intent, and they're giving accurate descriptions and they're telling their stories. And so I think that that's very strange, and I think that it's because I don't know where is Professor Little now. I don't know. Got to track him down. I bet he would be even creepier than Mark, to be quite honest. I bet that he would be like a welcome addition into this cast of characters. I mean, almost like an Addams family of characters. So this next comment, this is not someone who's a witness to anything or has anything that is rooted in fact. This is pure speculation. But I found it very interesting looking back. The fact that a lot of the stuff that this person says actually lines up with the documentary. And I think that I never expected for this comment to be like validated as much as it is, to be honest. He says, Herb Baumeister had accomplices, and you want to know who one of them was? That tour guide she's talking about, which is the owner of the property. Do you understand now, people? What do you think Fox Hollow Farms is? Its current owner is named Rob Graves, and his wife is a coroner in Indiana. Do you know what the head of the Satanic Temple, the largest organized satanic group in the U.S.'s name is? Lucien Greaves, or Graves, but with an E before the A. That sounds a lot like Lucifer Graves, doesn't it? That is interesting. That is interesting, people. Whether any of it is true or not, I'm not saying that it is or isn't. I'm just saying this is an interesting theory. Is it starting to become clear to you, this person says? Fox Hollow Farms was, is, and will always be a satanic ritual murder holy site. Who do you think chose that site for Herb and Julie? Herb Baumeister Sr., Herb's father, chose it. Who do you think made the mortgage payments? Herb Sr. Who is Herb Sr.? Look into it. Military intelligence doctor, quote unquote, who like Julie's well, he wasn't a doctor, he was an anesthesiologist, who like Julie's military intelligence father are all the same people, Satanists. Do you get it now? What I find interesting is that he correctly calls Fox Hollow Farms as a holy site, at least to people like Mark, which is why he took off his shoes. So is this some sort of a Rosemary's Baby scenario? I don't know. But my theory, and this is just a theory, because I didn't really delve into what I think of the current owners of the Fox Hollow Farm property, but I found it really weird in the second episode. The guy was like, you know, people who like true crime, they worship serial killers and shit. And it's like, they show video of this guy, who, the same guy who said that, he purposefully bought the sink handles that were the original sink handles that Herb used. Not only that, but he takes a bath in the same bathtub that Herb took baths in. I mean, are you insane? Like, I would never do something like that. That is weird. And they showed him swimming in the pool as well. The same exact pool, the pool area, they kept it all the same. Who knows why? And they're showing all this footage, and it's like, okay, at the very least, he's got to admit he's interested in true crime as well, because he showed, he's like, I got this big box, and it's just full of every single magazine article that's ever been written about this case, and it's like, oh, that's a... like, I don't see a lot of true crime fans who do stuff like that. There are a couple of weirdos here and there, like, who collect, like, a lot of weird stuff. You know, what I tried to do was I tried to get something that belonged to them, or belonged to her, because I thought maybe I could get a psychic to read it so that she could reveal more information about the accomplices or something. That's what I thought that I could do. And then I bought something else instead, and then that led me to another path that I won't talk about on this video, but it was very interesting. And, you know, what I did was I bought a piece of, and I'm not going to go fully into it, but I just wanted to mention it because it correlates to this house and what I think of the owners. This was a little tiny piece of a brick from a house where people were murdered. And to be honest, when I got that piece of brick, I immediately felt energy off of it. Extreme energy. And it would change my energy throughout the 1 week that I had it before I gave it to someone else, which was hilarious. I was like, hey, can you take care of this for me? And I just sent it down to Florida. And it's like, yeah, just send all the world's problems down to Florida. Why don't you? But I could feel at this extreme level of energy. And I feel like anyone who is in a mansion that size, that property, that still has bones on the property, and that seems like a bad idea. Like, I would not want to do that. It would be fun to go there and to take like a tour of it and like spend some hours there and see what it actually is like. Although I don't know if I could. I mean, I'd be scared shitless. So I just couldn't imagine like living there on a day-to-day basis. I guess maybe you could say, well, these guys, you know, they go to work in the city, and so they don't really have to spend a lot of time at the farm, but, they spend some time there. They sleep there, they go to the bathroom there, do a lot of other stuff there. I don't know if I want to do that. And I think, how could you with all that energy? I mean, just thinking about the amount of energy is kind of scary. I had talked to this psychic, and before they tore the house down where I got a little tiny piece of brick from, she was supposed to go to that house and do a show there and talk about what she was reading there, because a psychic show, typical, but she could not even get close to the house. She said that the energy was so strong that all of her equipment ran out of battery, which that's a telltale classic sign of ghosts and a sign of bad stuff, bad juju. But it's like, she couldn't even go up to it. She couldn't even go near it. She couldn't even make it up the hill to get to the house. So, yeah, I don't see how. I mean, I know that, like, they got priests and shit to come in there and bless the place, but it's like, when you're letting Mark Goodyear come there all the time, it's like that kind of cancels out any progress that you've made, because it's like, I don't know what kind of energy comes off of him, but from the interviews that he gave, the energy that comes off, it's like this guy knows a lot more than he's leading on. And that's another weird thing, is that I've heard, I heard all the way back in 2020 that on Paranormal Roundtable that Mark Goodyear said that Herb was in a satanic cult with a lot of members. And that was all the way back in 2020, or even past that, even before then. And so I don't understand why Mark didn't just tell his story. Like, he admitted that he lied back in the 90s. So why did he think that it would be okay that he could come back and just, like, lie again and just leave all this stuff out? I think that was very telling on his part. If he cares so much about this, about one of the victims, that he's so heartbroken over, and he couldn't even handle talking about, oh yeah, I went to his funeral, then that's basically like showing that he is guilty and showing that he knows all about what happened. And I don't understand why he wouldn't just tell the story. And that's where I think that law enforcement needs to get involved, because, as much as it's fun to do this kind of documentary thing where it's like, oh, look, we're confronting this guy who, he's going to say it all, and, we're going to get him his real reactions. It's like, if he's in a room with police and detectives and they're saying, we have all this evidence, we're going to put you away for this amount of time, he's probably going to break at some point, right? And he's going to have to tell them. It's not going to be like this thing where it's like, oh, we'll save that for another show. It's like, no, fuck you. You tell us all that you sack of shit. So my theory, though, going back to the owners of the property, somebody mentioned that Rob, the owner of the property, he had a silent partner when buying the property, and that he only owns 50% of it, and the other. So I thought that's very suspicious. And I personally think, and again, this is just a theory, I'm just putting out a theory. There have been a lot worse theories about Rob, including that he is Herb Baumeister himself, and Herb faked his death. Which just, I don't think so, because Rob acts a lot more normal. I mean, he doesn't act completely normal. He doesn't act like a normal guy. But he acts a lot more normal than Herb was supposed to have been like in real life. Like, Herb was bizarre. Herb was definitely insane, for sure. Rob doesn't really act like that, so I think that's a bunch of bullshit. But I think that him and his wife were placed in that mansion. I think that after what happened, they had to place people in there to preserve the property, and for some other reason that is unknown to me. I don't know what it is, but I don't think that it's good. And I think that they were placed there for some reason. And I think another interesting thing to point out, and this is, I'm not saying that they're bad. I don't know anything about them, but I think that they were placed there, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Like, maybe they didn't even know about it, and like the silent partner was in on it or something, and that like they just wanted these people to get the property because they knew that they would preserve it and they wouldn't really change anything about it. You know what I mean? Like it was allowed to happen, and so, you know, they were destined to be the new caretakers of the property, you know, like in The Shining, like you always were the caretaker, you know, like that's like what Rob is. Rob's story is that of Johnny in The Shining, just without the murder and the child abuse. It's like, hey, like he has come there to be the caretaker of that property. And you know, a lot of people talked about how much he defended Mark and how much he wasn't really willing to get into details about Mark being involved. And yeah, I think that's strange as well. Another thing that I think is strange is this is a very odd part of Mark's story. Mark claims that the burn pit was right off of the patio, when it turns out the burn pit was inside the forest, which, oh yeah, you would have had to have people helping you take the bodies out there to burn. There's no way that you could just carry a body in there all by yourself, let alone all the, like 30 people, whatever, how many were killed there. But what I think is interesting is how Mark pointed out the specific spot. Now, the reason why I think that's interesting, and now this is, again, it's all speculation, it's all theory, is because there was a psychic on TikTok who commented on a video, and she said that Mark had the videotapes, and all the videotapes, and that they were buried near the pool. Well, you could say that little area where Mark said was the burn pit, which even Rob was surprised that he said that. He was like, oh, I don't know why he said that. And also, maybe the burn pit was originally there. Maybe they moved it into the forest because he didn't want his family to see. I don't know, because, I mean, it was right out there. You definitely could have seen what was going on out there. So that's another thing, very odd, suspicious. But maybe that spot where Mark said was the burn pit is where Mark buried the videotapes. And maybe the reason, and again, this is all speculation, I am just putting something out there as a theory. Maybe the reason why Mark is so close with the Graves family is because he wants the access to those tapes, so that if they're sold, if somebody wants a copy of one of them, he can get on the backyard. He can get out there and he can dig up that spot and get out whatever videotape he needs to copy it, distribute it, and then bring it back. Because I thought that whole thing, they didn't really ever question that of like, why did he say that the burn site was so close to the house? Like, unless there's something to hide in the forest? I don't know, because I mean, they know all about the forest, so, you know, it just begs the question. And it goes along with a lot of what the director of the movie or the show was saying, which is, or I can't remember which person said it, but is this Mark's way of telling what really happened, like, without having to really tell what really happened, you know? Like, was him talking about the burn site being in that specific area, was that Mark's way of confessing that something else was there? Because Mark has recently found God. And I don't think he's found God. I think that he's found a cover story. I mean, the typical thing with these killers and all these people who commit true crime is that they all become these born-again Christians, and they hide behind Christianity to make themselves look like good people. I think that the mainstream Christian organization, the church, and all the people involved in it are evil as hell. And they hide behind Christianity, they hide behind God, they hide behind religion, so that they can do whatever they want without really feeling bad about it. And I think in this case, Mark, I think that he, quote-unquote, found God, but I think his God is Herb. I think that his God is Herb or Satan, and I think that those videotapes are somewhere, and I think that they are all around still. I don't think a single one was destroyed. Maybe Herb's copies were destroyed. I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that they're all still around and available to see, and which is really, really scary and kind of sad when you think about it, because who knows what's really on those tapes too. There was a little rumor that somebody said that they saw a tape on the dark web, and they said that this body floated off of a mattress and it broke into pieces and blood went everywhere. And so if that's what's on the tapes, then you can certainly understand why Mark screamed. You know what I mean? So I wonder if that's true. I would ask Mark about that, because he wouldn't have to get into detail. All he'd have to do is just, but then again, how could you believe him? How could you believe a single word he says after he didn't tell the truth about the shooting? He basically pretended like, oh, maybe it was all a dream. That's something a killer would say. That's not something an innocent person would say. So I don't know. But the last thing that I wanted to say, this is another theory. Maybe, this is a big property. They don't know where all the bones are. What if, you guys remember the book and the movie Holes with Shia LaBeouf, and how basically that it was like this prison camp for kids, this juvenile camp, a work camp, where kids are forced to go out into the desert to dig for holes, or not to dig for holes, but to dig holes for mysterious reasons, basically for no reason other than it's hard, and you just got to dig up them holes. What if these people were given this property so that they could search for the tapes? Like, what if they, not them particular, maybe Mark, like maybe they were given it so that Mark could look for the tapes, but wouldn't he have found them by now? I don't know, but I think that could be a possibility, because what happened with, this was a big plot hole, what happened with whatever locker Herb mentioned in one of his stores, where he said that some evidence was there or something, and so what happened with that? Which member of the cult got to that? And then where are the videotapes, and where are the skulls? The skulls are another aspect of the mystery, to where it's like, I don't believe that those skulls have been destroyed either. I think that somebody has those, and they are like, I don't know. I mean, I could only imagine Mark going into the basement, stripping off all his clothes, and, getting on his knees and praying in front of those skulls or something like that. And so who knows? Maybe it's something like that. I don't know. But I just find all of this stuff in the documentary very interesting. And I thought it would be interesting to talk more about the documentary itself, and talk more about the victim side of things, because that's also very, very important. And I hope that we get to hear more about I would really like to just see more of the community in general if they do another show, to see more if they remember Mark. because that was something that someone pointed out, is that, and I think the director even talked about, the owner of one of the clubs said that he never saw Mark get up on a table and shout that Herb was the killer. And so, is there anyone in the gay community that remembers Mark doing that? Because when I first heard him say that, I said, that's a bunch of bullshit. He's just saying that to cover his ass. He's just saying that to take away suspicion, because it's just very bizarre. Even he knows it's bizarre. The fact that, like, he was with Herb and he didn't do anything about it. He just, like, helped in all the stuff that he did, and he didn't do anything about it. Like, so yeah, anyways, please like this video and comment, and then please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see more honest reviews like this. I was so glad to finally talk about this case, because I've been researching it for years, and like anytime I saw something new, I would get really excited and jump right on it, because I really want to know like what really happened. And I hope that the law enforcement takes this case seriously for once, and I hope that they put all of the people involved in the case in prison, including Mark. And I also hope that the videotapes get found, so that they can get put away, so that they aren't being distributed anymore and sold, blah, 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 blah. And I hope that the skulls get returned too, because maybe, and that's another thing. People pointed out how when Mark was saying, you know, how many victims of Herb's are there, it almost looked like he was counting. And I think maybe a way of knowing the amount of victims is keeping all the skulls. So that's just a little extra thing. But so yeah, anyways, goodbye everybody. See you soon.